Hello everybody, welcome back to my RC Plane channel. I'm James, continuing on with this Balsa USA Smoothie build. So in my last video, I installed all of the servos in the fuselage and the wing. And in this video, I'm going to go ahead and hook them all up, and I'm going to install the control rods and hook up obviously the elevator and the rudder and the ailerons and also the throttle. I'm going to be using the different control rods, and I'm also going to be installing the different control horns and such. So before I start doing that, I wanted to quickly kind of go over my electronics, because as I'm setting this stuff up, I have to have all the servos kind of on and centered so they don't move while I'm trying to kind of adjust the different control rod settings. So I've already set up my electronics. So what I'm using, of course, I'm using the Futaba, the S3004's servos, and then I'm going to be using this is an R2000, well, 2006 GS Futaba 6-channel receiver, and I've already kind of got it set up with the transmitter. Here's the box for it. These guys are about 40 bucks or so, 45 bucks for one of these. And then for the radio, which I've mentioned before, I'm just using this Futaba 6-channel. This is a T6J, and I got this probably like, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. And I don't think they actually make this particular model anymore, but they'll make something compatible. As you know, everything electronic like this, it's always moving pretty quick, the technology, so they're always changing the models and everything. But yeah, you may be able to find this one, but I don't believe that Futaba is actually making it anymore. So that's that. Let me see what else I have here. I have a little switch. I'm going to be using the Traxxas switch, which is compatible with the Futaba connections. And then for my power source, I'm going to be using, this is a 6-cell. I may drop it down to, I'm sorry, this is a 5-cell, but I'm going to probably drop it down to a 4-cell. And this is just made by Batteries America. And if you're not familiar with Batteries America, it's a website where you can go on and you can just basically order all kinds of batteries for all kinds of applications, and they have a radio, or basically a radio control section. And you can choose from things like the Futaba setups to Spectrum and that type of thing. And you can choose different kind of configurations. And so this is a flat one, for example, and you can order square configurations, or you can go on and check it out. And you can also order them in different capacities. This is a 2700, and again, it's a 6-volt. So yeah, I really like Batteries America. It's a really cool website, and I think things are they're not too expensive, and they ship pretty fast. So one thing I wanted to talk about is that I've had some questions. People ask me kind of about radios and that, to kind of go over radios and different radio systems. And to be honest with you, I don't know a heck of a lot about radios. I've always used, or radio systems, I've always used Futaba, and I've always had really good success with them. I find them to be a quality radio and pretty reliable. Knock on wood, I don't think I've ever had a servo or a radio fail from was Futaba. So in any case, I've always liked them, but I also know that there's other brands out there, and the popular one that I see a lot of, as everybody knows, is the Spectrum. So probably a lot of you are using Spectrum, and I know from what I've seen, other people they probably use more Spectrum at my local flying field than I see people using Futabas. So I imagine they're pretty reliable, and people obviously like them a lot. So that's another big brand. And then there's a whole bunch of other brands that I don't really know anything about. But in any case, I've always used Futaba. I don't know a heck of a lot about all the different systems. Like I mentioned, there's a mosquito flying around over there, and I'm keeping my system pretty simple. I'm just using an analog setup. I'm not doing any kind of programming. But in any case, so that's what I got. So sorry, I can't really mention or discuss too much more about the radios than that. And I always advise do your research online and such, and talk to other people to get advice. If you're kind of looking for a radio and you're new to the hobby, do some research and such. But in any case, I don't think you can go wrong with Futaba, and I'm pretty sure you probably can't go wrong with Spectrum. And so just take that is all I can kind of really offer in terms of my advice or information about radios. Okay, and then one thing else I wanted to mention, and kind of why I'm talking about the electronics, is because I already synced up the receiver with my radio, because I need to have the servos functional as I install the control rods and stuff, because what's going to happen is, of course, I want them to be centered while I'm setting everything up. And then if I'm sort of like moving the control horns and doing this and that, and they kind of move and they rotate, I want to be able to keep them centered at all times. So I needed to kind of get that going. Okay, so the kit comes with a little set of control horns, and I'm going to use the ones that they provided. These are pretty typical. And then I purchased before, and I did install, of course, in an earlier video, I installed the control rod housing, and that's already in the fuselage. And I'm using this golden rod setup from Sullivan. And these are getting a little bit hard to find. I don't know if Sullivan stopped making them or what, but they do. I think I checked their website a few weeks back and they had some more in stock, but I know there was a period where they were hard to get. But anyhow, I'm using this. This is a golden rod setup. It's the 506. So there's these are the inner rods that I'm going to take out of here. And of course, these are going to be cut. And they come in different lengths. I think this is I don't know what is this. It's probably how long is this one? Let's see here. This one's about maybe a 4-foot length. And they make shorter lengths. And then in the bottom of this thing, I got a little package of hardware with some clevises in here. Somebody corrected me once, right? Because I was calling them clevises. When we were kids, we called them clevises, and I never kind of changed my ways. But so they give you a little bit of hardware. They give you some little kind of like some threaded rod in there, and a few other things when you're setting them up. So I don't know if I'll use these particular things, but they comes with the kit there. And let's see, I have a bunch of control rods, metal rods, and I think most of these are by Dubrow. And these are, they have a threaded side, which the clevis goes onto, and then the other side is just basically blank or non-threaded. And I'll be using some of these. And what else do I have sitting here? And so I have my control horns for the servos. So the control horns that come with the servos, they come with a variety of sizes. There's like 2 or 3 that come in the package of these. And I actually did purchase, I purchased these guys. I purchased a couple of these. These are sort of longer ones by Futaba, which you see here. And they have a little bit longer arm on them. So the one that comes with the kit, with the Futaba servos, you can kind of see are these ones. This is the biggest one that comes in the little box, and this one's a little bit longer. It's got like one more sort of hole on it, but it's a slightly longer. And the reason I got these, and I'll show you when we get to it, when we get to the ailerons, is that these ones just barely kind of came out of the top of the wing, so I needed to get a little bit longer one. So I purchased a couple of those. Again, those are their Futaba ones. And what else do I have here? That's that. Oh, and then I'm going to be using these. These are these Easy Link by Dubrow. I like these a lot. These are sort of like little, I'll show you when I get to them. These just basically kind of clip on. What you do is you take grab one of these if I have one. Yeah, you bend your control rod like this, kind of put a 90 in it, and then these guys clip on and kind of plug into it. So I'll be going over that when I get to it. But so that's kind of basically the hardware that I'm going to be using. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, because it's kind of a tricky thing, I did mention this before, is we're going to have to cut a notch in the tail section to accommodate the rudder control horn, and then the control rod right in here, because as I mentioned before, the tail section is kind of blunt and it kind of gets in the way of itself. So we got to make a little slot in there, which I haven't done yet, so I'll be doing that also. All right, so that's kind of about it for kind of the hardware and electronics that I have sitting out here, and we'll go ahead and get things set up and start putting all this stuff in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the throttle servo and the throttle linkage hookup. I'm going to do them one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get power to it. So I'm going to hook up my battery and my switch. And what I'm going to do is, at this point, I'm not going to put in the battery and the receiver and all that until the very end, because I have to balance the plane, or check the balance of the plane, and I don't want to put everything in right now and have to move things around. And the battery is so heavy that it's your best bet probably, if you're off balance a little bit, to be able to move your battery to the right location. So I kind of keep everything in terms of electronics, in terms of the receiver and everything, just kind of leave it sort of off to the side while I work on the servos. So there we go there. And then these wires are going to be for the elevator and the rudder. We'll just leave those off to the side, back in there. Throttle is number 3. Let me turn on my radio. And let's turn the battery on, and we should see that thing probably move a little bit. There it goes. Okay, so there it is. So let me move this out of the way for now. In fact, I can just kind of hang this down below. All right, so typically the control, the servo arms usually come with multiple arms attached. Like this one's got 4 on it. And usually what you do is you just cut. You don't have to. If you have the room to leave the whole thing on, you can. There's no problem with that, but they kind of get in the way of each other and such. So I'm going to cut off 3 of these kind of arms. I like to use these little crescent cutters. And I sort of score it, because if you clip these things, they can go shooting across the room. And you could probably poke your eye out or something. So I kind of give it a little bit of a score. Don't cut it fully. Then go to the other side. Yeah, they can come shooting off of there pretty fast. That. Okay. And they're always kind of ugly looking, but I think most people tend to trim these things up like this. I'll try to cut these little pieces off. All right, something like that. And this is actually probably pretty long for the throttle, but we'll go ahead and just kind of put it on there for now, like that. And obviously you want to kind of set, unlike the other control, other servos where you have everything sort of centered with the control arm or the servo arm, the throttle is always kind of offset because the full range of motion starts from one side, like this. So probably something like that. Now for the connection, I'm going to use, as I mentioned, I'm just going to use these Bro. These are it's just metal control rods with a little plastic clevis on the end here, and then the threaded end with the clevis is going to attach to the throttle arm, and then the blank end is going to attach to the servo arm using these little easy links. Now I already put, so first of all, the control arm for the throttle is back in here. Hopefully you can kind of see it. And then it's not a straight shot from the throttle servo to the carburetor. So I'm going to have to put a couple little bends in the rod here. And I already put a dog leg in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one. And let's see here. I'm going to feed it through. And I got to find the little hole I drilled in the firewall, which is right about there. There it goes. Okay, so now that guy's in there. And then there's going to be our control rod. So you can kind of see it's off, kind of not in complete alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another little kind of bend, kind of another little dog leg to kind of get it over to the control horn. Okay, one thing also I want to kind of point out and hopefully you can kind of see it on here, is that when I screw the clevis on initially to the threaded rod, I kind of go over, I screw it on further, so there's maybe this, I don't know, that's about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/16 of an inch kind of sticking out, and that'll give me a little bit of leeway to kind of back it back out if I have to when I'm making adjustments. So I like to kind of put it in there like that, so that gives me a little bit more room to work. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in here, and that should be good like that. Okay, so now I'm just going to have to go ahead and make a little bend in there, but I want to connect it first to the throttle arm, and I need a little screwdriver for that to kind of open it up. Yeah, this engine's kind of buried in here. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and pop this on, and I'm going to put it on the furthest hole out, because I find that the throttle doesn't need as much move or as much throw as the other control kind of hookups. All right, and I realize with the camera angle you can't totally see inside there, but there's you can kind of catch that, the throttle carburetor opening and closing. Okay. Now again, so one thing I wanted to mention, and is that, so for the amount of throw you get, so just kind of from a basic standpoint, when you have there's two extremes, right? So there's going to be the greatest amount of throw and the least amount of throw. So the greatest amount of throw is when you have on the servo arm, on the outermost hole on the servo arm, and then in the innermost hole on whatever control horn you're hooking to. That's going to give you the greatest amount of movement. The opposite is true for the least amount of movement. You put it on the hole closest, or the inside hole, or the one closest to the servo, and then on the outermost hole on the control horn, and that'll give you the least amount of movement. And then sort of in between is going to be your kind of middle ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on the, I know just from experience that I'm going to be able to put it on the outer hole for the throttle. And let's go ahead and play with this now. Move that back there. All right, well, before I kind of try to connect this, so these rods are a little bit over 1/16 of an inch. I don't know exactly what size they are. Maybe they're 5/64. And the hole in the servo arm, I think it's 1/16 of an inch, because I have a drill bit that's a 1/16, and I can get that in there. So these rods are a little bit bigger. So before I try to connect them, I'm going to have to kind of drill these holes out. I was going to use a little pin vise. Like that. That should now kind of fit this dude. Yeah, okay. Alright, so I'm just going to throw this back on here. Go. And most likely what's going to happen, once I get this thing all set up, I'm probably just going to end up, well, I know I'm going to be reducing the amount of throw in the programming in the transmitter. I'm just going to have to reduce it down a little bit, because it's not going to need to move as far as I think it's going to be after I get it set up. Okay, so that's back. So that's where I need to be, just like that. Oop. And let me go ahead and bend it now, kind of where I think it's going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull one of these little easy links out, just to kind of give me an idea of where I can put my bend. Because I can't put the bend, you know, I may just go ahead and just put an angle in it like that. Because what's going to happen is, you know, because it's on a radius, it's going to swing. It's going to swing forward like that, and it's going to go out. So it's going to push the rod over as it goes this way, and then it's going to pull it back in when I go full throttle on it like that. I'm pretty close. I mean, I'm really close. Nice thing about this is wire, so if I mess it up, I can just kind of bend it back. I'm going to try it like right about here. Something like that. I just find that this is really tight in here with the tank and everything else, how I got this set up. So if you're building this kit, you may obviously be doing this a lot different than I am, but I'm going to try it like that. And that should, it's going to push it all the way out here. That should be okay. And then down here, it's going to be kind of back like that. Okay. Now I need to put a 90-degree angle in this thing. Mark it here. Right there. So what I need to do now is, because this thing's already kind of in here, I'm going to disconnect it again from the throttle so I can kind of rotate that thing back so I can bend it. But I'm going to go ahead and cut off some of it before because it's going to get in the way of itself, I think. So I'm going to cut some off first. If I can. These are kind of weak cutters. Oh, there you go. Remember that game Operation? So now I'm going to go ahead and put a 90 in this wire here. Now this I want to have kind of a pretty clean 90 if I can, because it's going to, I'm going to go down on that like that. And I can always twist it if it's not perfect, but something like that right there. I'm going to cut my finger. Okay, so I need a little bit more, I think. A little more. Okay. And then this guy clips on like this. I may have to drill this out too, I think. We'll see here. Yeah, that end is pretty sharp too. Okay, let me drill this out. Okay. That'll be like that. So now I want to cut off this little piece now. Like that. Okay. That will work. Move that off there. Okay, now I'm going to just try to get that little burr off of there. Kind of end up with a little sharp end like that. So I want to get that kind of smoothed out, kind of cleaned up. All right, so let's go ahead and see. Now what I can do to make this a little bit easier on myself is I can pop that off. Although I didn't make it easier, I just lost it in there. Where'd it go? It's down there again. I'm going to have to actually put a twist in that. Hold on a second. Okay, I got to pop this off here because I thought I had a 90. It looks like I'm close to a 90, but I think it's sort of angling it, kind of tilting it out a little bit like that. So I'm going to go and pull this off real quick, and I'll kind of straighten that out. All right, so like I said, I just took that off, and I kind of put a little bit of twist in it, and I kind of actually put a little bit more of a bend in the 90 there to kind of get it to be more in line. And I also did a little bit of trimming right back in here. I feel like a dentist. I kind of trimmed a little bit back in here to make a little bit more room for that control rod. And now, so now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to set everything up, kind of get everything hooked up, and then I'll go back and fine tune all the throws. I'm not going to try to do that right now. I'm just going to get it kind of set up to where it's close, and then do the fine tuning later. So let's see here. There's the throttle completely open. That's basically full throttle right there. And so I don't have very much movement here. And I'm going to look at my, check out my throttle on the stick here. That's basically idle. And that's full throttle right there. So I'm only moving about, looks like I'm only moving about 2/3 of the stick. So I'll make some adjustments. Okay, so I decided to go ahead and mess around with my endpoint adjustments a little bit, and I did kind of get it dialed in. So there's my throttle, there's idle, and there's full throttle there. Let's take a look at the servo. I do get a little bit of buzz. You can hear a little bit of buzzing, like when I get to the full throttle. Kind of hear it, and then it goes away. I may adjust that a little bit. I may need to pull it back just a tad so it doesn't kind of get that resistance. But that's pretty good. And then let's go ahead and check out the carburetor, the throttle. There's fully open, and there's down to idle. And I'm going to have to adjust this. I know that once I get it kind of set up, I'm going to have to adjust the idle and everything. But then I got my throttle cut, like right there. Kind of clicks down, you kind of hear it. Okay, well, I was going to go ahead and hook up the rudder and the elevator and the ailerons in this video, but I'm kind of running out of time. And I know that I have to, for the rudder, I have to put that slot in the tail section in order to accommodate the control horn and all that. So what I thought I would do is just go ahead and hold off and do that in the next video. So yeah, I'm going to call it good for now. All right, so thanks for watching my channel. I really appreciate it, and we will see you next time.